It's the weekend. That means it's time to look at the week ahead. Welcome to the Fantasy NBA Today podcast, a sports ethos presentation hosted by yours truly, Aaron Bruski, FSWA Hall of Famer Steve Dr. A. Alexander, and Dynasty expert extraordinaire Mark Camaro joins us today. And we're going to get ahead of the chaos of fantasy playoffs for a lot of folks, close to the fantasy playoffs for a lot of folks. We're going to get ahead of all of that chaos. We'll talk some Dynasty Risers and Fallers and just generally get on with it. Before we get into the meats and potatoes of the episode, let's shout out Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform. They're also our sponsor and your number one source for online betting in 2025 and beyond. Whether you're a seasoned fan or a first-time bettor, Bet Online is your ultimate game day companion with the largest selection of odds on everything from NBA, college, NHL, UFC. Bet Online continues to be your number one sports betting source. From every three-pointer to hat trick, BetOnline has you covered with odds, stats, and more for every game, every play, and every win. BetOnline, the game starts here. Every three-pointer, every hat trick. Guys, how are we doing? What's up, Doc?
Happy Saturday.
Yeah, it is a happy Saturday. How about you, Mark?
The happiest of Saturdays.
You know, here today on Saturday, I'm pretty happy. How are you doing, Mark?
I'm doing great on this Saturday. We're kind of getting into the morass of the NBA season, depending how your redraft leagues are doing, or your dynasty leagues, or maybe your dynasty season's been over for a couple of weeks, so now you're just can maybe sit back and enjoy the show. It's always an interesting March and April, I feel like, for fantasy.
Yeah, I mean, with dynasty formats, I really think because leagues are so different. I mean, there could be so many different things going on. I would like to personally just like explore that with dynasty leagues that maybe I create personally down the road. But enough of the meta talk. Let's look at what we've got ahead. We've got a 5-game week for the Brooklyn Nets. So we'll talk about them, and they are all sorts of confusing on an everyday basis. So that'll be fun. We have 20 teams that play 4 games. So a lot of basketball being played in the association. That leaves 9 teams with 3 games. We have 7 teams that have 7 teams. That is not 17. 7 teams play 2 back-to-backs this week. Looking through the list of them, I didn't see anybody that jumped off the page where I'm like, oh, a bunch of dudes are going to be resting on that team. But if you're wondering, it's Brooklyn, Memphis, Indiana, San Antonio, Oklahoma City, Denver, and Sacramento. I won't do that for everything here, but 13 teams play 1 back-to-back. Nothing, again, jumped out that doesn't reach the overall threshold of silly season. We're always looking out for everything that could happen anyway. But 10 teams that don't play back-to-backs. You got Charlotte in there. Now, that caught my eye because the Mark Williams, and there's a ton of action with Charlotte silly season going on. So that gives their players room to breathe. Maybe they play more rather than less. Golden State, a couple old dudes there that caught my eye. Cleveland, resting players, so maybe they rest a little less, though I think they might just not care and go for the ultimate rest. And then New Orleans has a guy named Zion Williamson and a couple others that may get extra run because there's not back-to-backs. As far as the schedule itself goes, Monday, 12 games, so that's a lot. Tuesday is a quality games day with 4 games. Wednesday, 9, Thursday, 5, so light there. We'll be looking a lot at that. Friday, 10 games, super busy, and it's busy throughout the weekend, 8 and 8 each day over the weekend. So we'll start with our top streaming teams. Brooklyn and Milwaukee play Tuesday, Thursday, Saturday, Sunday. So a ton of quality action there for these guys. One team is super boring, and that's Milwaukee. Brooklyn is more exciting, but it feels to me like a lot of the streamers have not come through for folks. But let's get into it. Mark, how do you like Brooklyn? How are you kind of approaching this streaming situation this week? Pardon me.
It's been really interesting with the Nets because they're actually playing their players, even though I think, myself included, and I think a lot of other people would say they should probably go easy and manage some of these players. They're playing players like Cameron Johnson, even D'Angelo Russell's playing. Both kind of came off, multi-week injuries. Cam Thomas is back, gobbling up shots. So, these streamers that you expect to pop up during silly season haven't exactly fully emerged yet. You're talking about names like Daron Sharp, Zaire Williams, Keon Johnson. And, I don't think any of them are super special, except maybe Daron Sharp for his rebounding and maybe doing a little bit of other big man stuff. But all those names you expect to get frisky due to their minutes, not necessarily their per-minute production, and they just don't have the minutes. those are the names I'd be looking at. Daron Sharp first, and then Zaire Williams or Keon Johnson if you're really feeling frisky on that Tuesday, Thursday. But it's going to depend a little bit if how their injury reports look. Otherwise, if their injury reports say, okay, Russell's playing, Cameron Johnson's playing, Cam Thomas is playing, Claxton is playing, sure, if you need the games played, go for these Nets, but I don't think you can expect too much really from them.
Yeah, I mean, you got a lot going on here. Jordi Fernandez wants this team to win, and he's already covered his number as coach. If you're evaluating how Jordi Fernandez has done, he's kind of crushed it, and has got a lot of momentum around the league. So I think he kind of gets a little carte blanche here. Your odds for lottery and things like that aren't great, and you're about 3 or 4 games out of a play-in spot, which if you're going to be in this range of teams, you might as well get the playoff experience out of it. So I kind of expect maybe the front half of the week to look different than the back half of the week, with more older players, more veterans possibly playing in the front half of the week rather than the back half of the week. With all of that in mind, Doc, do you have any other angles on streamers that you like from Brooklyn?
Well, I mean, anytime you can get a guy that plays 5 games in a week, I'm all for it. Keon Johnson, I think, is at the top of my list. And then Zaire Williams, Jalen Wilson, Tyrese Martin, Daron Sharp, and Trenton Watford are all guys, depending on how deep your league is, you can take a shot with. But it's risky business any way you slice it, man. The Brooklyn box scores are never very much fun to look at.
I do like that Trendon Watford shout out. He's kind of a weird player in today's game, kind of a point forward, like forward-sized body, but has more guard skills. So if other guard usage players are out, they do entrust him to run the offense and even bring the ball up the court. And we've seen him have some interesting assist games, some rebound games. It's just, are enough other players out ahead of him that he can actually actualize that role? And if not, then usually he doesn't see enough usage. But I think it's a good shout. He probably has the most potential to pop off in any one of these games.
If we did one of those shows with dings, I would have dinged that one. That was a really good piece of analysis there, Mark. And that's why you need to follow his Dynasty, all of his Dynasty writing at Sports Ethos, and follow him on Twitter. And what's your Twitter handle again? It's Mac Attack. What is it?
On Twitter, it's Mac Attack 145. And then
145, that's right.
Blue Sky is Mark C Sports Ethos.
Oh, how buttoned down over at Blue Sky. That's an interesting dichotomy there. All right, so I would like to throw a name out there that I don't even know if he's with the team right now. It's Tosin Ebouman. Yeah, I got that right. Oh yeah, Tosin Ebouman. That guy. I think at some point in time he will get a shot, and it will be more of a points, rebounds, maybe some 3-pointers. Not really heavy in the defensive stats, but depending on your format and how deep your leagues are, maybe he makes an appearance. Maybe even later in the year. Keon Johnson to me is the guy that we're all rooting for. It really is tough if Cam Thomas is going to come back. That piece, they had a lot of momentum as a team, and I feel like they had to kind of by default play the guy, and it really gummed it up. And Cam Johnson as well, gumming it up. It's hard to build continuity, and that's why the box score has been a little iffy for these guys. Daron had a moment there. We've been wanting him to have that moment for a long time. It hasn't really come to fruition, but it could. There's players that you look at on the waiver wire and you go, I don't think it's going to work, but at least there's a shot. That's kind of where I put Daron Sharp in a lot of questions and answers I have about my own teams. If anybody else has a Brooklyn take, feel free to just shout it at the top of their lungs. But Milwaukee's the next team on the list. This team is barren. We talked about this yesterday. It's so boring to kind of pick streamers out of this squad. But if maybe we approach it like this, and feel free to do it some other way, but who do you like best? Maybe who's the guy that you're going to take a shot on for this upcoming week out of Milwaukee? Let's start with you, Mark.
Is there a none of the above answer? I mean, in the Dynasty leagues I tend to play more, it's deeper leagues. So some of these names I may care about. This is talking 250, 300 deep. So Jericho Sims, just even getting some backup big minutes, grabbing some boards. sure, he's a name I might look at in those style formats, but in these standard leagues, he's not going to do enough. Gary Trent, maybe you spike that monster performance. Probably the most upside, but could also just give you, 5 points, like a board and assist, and that's it on, 5 shots. That's not really doing anything for you. Ryan Rollins, if you want to maybe try to spike some steals, it's pretty barren here. Even for like targeting specific stats, it's pretty untrustworthy all around.
Yeah, I mean, you factor in as well, like that they don't have, back-to-backs that jump off the page here, causing them one back-to-back for these guys. So it's not like you're going to get a ton of if they had 2 back-to-backs this week, you go, okay, maybe these stars, they play 2 games somehow, and now you got a chance here. But I'll plant the flag with Kevin Porter. Doc, who are you going to, if you need 4 games in those 4 days, who are you going to go with? Or even half that. You need just the first 2.
I would rank my guys Kevin Porter Jr., Taurean Prince, and AJ Green. And I'm not excited about any of them.
That is brutal. So great news to know that Brooklyn can really, really help a lot of folks out there. I think in the aggregate, as much as they've disappointed us, the 5 games is really outstanding. Milwaukee, not so much. Okay, let's look at some of the next best options. Let's go to Washington, Detroit, and New Orleans. They play Tuesday, Thursday, and Saturday. So you get quality games on Tuesday, Thursday, or quality days, I should say. And then you get the weekend game. So Washington has been my team for a while. So whatever you guys don't like there, I probably like them. But let's go to you, Doc, first. What's up with Washington?
What's up with Washington? Well,
what is up with Washington?
It's kind of messy. Like, we don't really know who's going to go off from night to night. Somebody needs to make a run to win Rookie of the Year, or we're not going to have a Rookie of the Year because they've all kind of been garbage. But Alex Sarr still has a chance to win Rookie of the Year. So I kind of like what he brings. I like Keyshawn George a lot. Bilal Coulibaly obviously has been a must-own player. And then with Jordan Poole banged up, yes, he practiced. He's got a sore elbow. Malcolm Brogdon, we haven't seen him in forever. Bub Carrington, we've been talking about him all year, but he's still relevant. He's still a thing. And Justin Champagnie. I feel like we could get some nice Champagnie run down the stretch. And lastly, why the hell does Chris Middleton still play for this team? He's getting minutes. He's putting up decent numbers. I don't really get it. I don't trust him. I'm not sad that I don't have him on any rosters. I'm just kind of shocked that he's still out there kicking along.
Yeah, that's Washington seems to do this. Washington is like there's a handful of teams that operate like this, that they just do that. They kind of go with the old school axiom of the veterans will come in and teach these young guys how to play, and everybody collectively rolls their eyes, even the veterans. Mark, what about you? What's up with Washington? How you doing with them?
No, I think Doc hit on a lot of the names there. And along with Chris Middleton kind of being the older vet he's still playing, I mean, you could probably throw Marcus Smart into that mix. Probably not enough minutes or juice to be worth it, but just a name to throw out there as well. And I mean, to your point with Washington playing their veterans, they did it last season with Tyus Jones and Kyle Kuzma. So maybe they just do it. I mean, I think it's a bit sillier with Smart and Middleton, who have a history of injuries. I mean, Middleton's been the story the past 2 seasons, but if you want to spike a Middleton performance and just get some points, boards, and assists, sure, for a one-day ad, if you know he's active, I don't hate it. I also have to shout out Rashawn Holmes too, who has just, I guess, I don't know.
Assuming he's healthy, yeah.
Assuming he's healthy. Don't want to say he's come back from the grave, but they'd never played him the whole season, and he just suddenly gets minutes. Maybe they're showcasing him for like matching salary in the trade next season with an interesting contract structure they have there, but he's doing something. So yeah, if he's active, maybe give him a look too.
It's a shout out to the athleticism that he's got. What were you about to say?
There's a lot of, I want to say, more depth names in Washington where, okay, decent minutes, probably not any spike performances like Bub Carrington, Keyshawn George, kind of more middling players. If you know they're going to get minutes, you'll probably get something out of them. So kind of a steady streamer production more than I think they're really going to pop off and can, you'll point to them as winning your matchup that week.
I mean, basically, that was an excellent song. Basically, I don't know if the pivot will hit this squad because of the commitment to playing veterans. That would be really sad. Like the Carringtons, the Koulibalys, the Champagnes, each of them have a unique fantasy appeal. It's, with Carrington, it's all those PRA stats, and with Koulibaly, he's got a green light to shoot as much as he wants, and without veterans taking the ball from him. But threes, steals, and blocks, he can bring that to the table. Champagne's had great permanent production forever, and you go to even like down roster, you go to Tristan Vukcevic. There's something there with him. We don't know what it is, and if it rises to the threshold of being super good. But if you don't have Middleton and you say give up on Jordan Poole and Sarr, for whatever reason, they don't want to run him into a Rookie of the Year award. He's played a ton of minutes, and it's not like he's not been developed this season. He's been out there just shooting his balls off every single night. For me, I would say that I think all of those young guys should be rostered. Like maybe in shallow 10-team leagues, maybe not in 12-team leagues that are, not as competitive, say. Though I just the idea that they do turn the page, and then for the last, say, 5 weeks of the season, you end up with fantasy gold. I think that would be awesome. So I think I'm more likely to have those players on my team than not. Maybe it doesn't work out for me, but that's the way I roll. Any other angles that either of you would like to talk about for Washington, since they are a little bit spicy?
Just that they're already so low in the standings and their team is bad enough as is. They don't need to rest players to lose games. So some teams feel the need to rest players. They don't need to. They can keep playing and they're going to be perfectly fine losing.
Well, that, and they've done such a good job of losing that they can win a couple games and they would actually still have the lead in the tank race. So really super interesting stuff there. Now we got Detroit on Tuesday and Thursday as well. A little bit of a boring streaming squad, and New Orleans. We actually talked about them a lot yesterday, me and Doc. So it'll be a little bit of a broken record there. But Mark, why don't we combine these two teams for you and just let you riff? Like, what do you think about Detroit and New Orleans from a streaming perspective? Who do you like the best?
You said it with Detroit. I feel like their players that should be rostered are already rostered, and the ones who aren't rostered for a reason. I feel like Malik Beasley, you either want him or you don't. You either want the threes or someone else rosters him, or you don't care about threes and he's on waivers. If you need threes, look at Malik Beasley if he's on your wire. I probably don't expect him to be on your wire, though.
Somebody's gobbling that up, yeah.
Someone probably has said, "Oh, look at the threes," and has picked him up. So, Isaiah Stewart, I expect him to be available, but he isn't doing enough nowadays. Jalen Duren has kind of more cemented the role than what we've seen earlier in the season. So, I don't trust Isaiah Stewart's minutes enough to give us enough production. Maybe Dennis Schroeder if you just want to try to spike an assist game or a pop-off game from him, but his role isn't great enough there where I really trust him either. So that's
it's
really
getting a little bit better though. They're trusting him in some high leverage situations, but you're hoping there.
Yes, I'm not expecting, and his bad games are pretty barren too. So it's pretty boom bust there, or boom bust for a streamer at least.
What about New Orleans? Let's get to the meaty part. Who do you like in New Orleans?
Meteor, maybe. Jordan Hawkins has been getting some more run. I don't know. I like the 3-point volume with him. I did grade him as, I think, my top movement shooter from that draft class 2 seasons ago. But the rest of the game is a little muted. It's more, is he going to see that role? I don't think he's seeing enough of a passing role or a lead guard role to get some of those just, give me assists that someone has to get. So if you want to try to spike threes, Hawkins, otherwise, I probably think you have better options. If Kelly Olynyk is playing, then sure, you can give him a look. If he's not playing, then Karlo Makovic would be a name. Had an intriguing summer league, kind of I would say too hyped a player. Some people were really going in on him hard, but maybe now is his time to shine. And then Jose Alvarado, if you just want some steals and assists, he's just a fun player to watch and root for. Against the Rockets 2 nights ago, he had his Grand Theft Alvarado, which didn't even get on the broadcast because they weren't even looking for it. But Alvarado is definitely a name.
They don't even have the film of it. It's just a thing that happened in the game that they don't know why.
I was trying to watch it back, and I'm like, oh, it literally didn't show. They just showed New Orleans hitting a 3, and I'm like, okay, cool, thanks.
That guy, I wish that he was healthy. He just, for whatever reason, he can't stay healthy and he can't play a lot of minutes. But what was this? He had a peak 40-point game at one point, something in the ballpark of that, 37 points, I think it was last year. And just a real treat to watch on the floor. Doc, sorry we left you hanging there. It was a penalty for that beautiful song that played on your cell phone. What do you like? What do you like out of Detroit and New Orleans that hasn't been talked about here?
I should be in the penalty box because I was setting lineups, a lot of lineups. I was making moves. I was picking up Brandon Williams of the Dallas Mavericks and dropping him in the lineups.
Look at you.
As much as I could. I wish that Brandon Boston was healthy for New Orleans because
I know.
I feel like this would be Brandon Boston's season, but he's just not. With Kelly Olynyk being banged up, first of all, I think Kelly O, when he's actually playing for New Orleans, is a guy
he picked up the pace,
worth having, but he's probably out again. Which brings Karlo Makovic into play, I think. Yves Missi has not been great, in my opinion. So I'm intrigued by Karlo Makovic. And Brew, you're like, ooh, yesterday you said Zion is kind of spry and he's really kind of impressive and he's going out there and trying to prove something. He's lulling you.
He's on the Brew diet.
He's just lulling you into thinking that he's good to go the rest of the season.
You guys didn't know that I am his health and nutrition coordinator now. I got him eating all chocolate.
Bumping him up the dynasty rankings.
There you go. That's my diet. If you're wondering how I lost the weight, it's chocolate.
So I'm super intrigued by Matkovic. And then Jose Alvarado and Jordan Hawkins are the other two.
Shut up, Brew. I just want to talk. Yeah, I agree with all of that. Let's get to one more streaming game. And I really want to pick Mark's brain with the Risers and Fallers here because we don't get Mark on the show all the time. And we want to make sure that we make the most of it. But we do have another streaming option Tuesday and Wednesday. It's the Clippers, the only team with the Tuesday, Wednesday back-to-back, and they're kind of interesting right now. I know the name that you guys are going to say, but let's have you say it anyway. Where are you guys at with the Clippers, starting with you, Mark?
I'm curious which name you think I'm going to say.
Okay.
I think it's Chris Dunn or Bogey Bogdanovich. One of those.
I was going to be Chris Dunn and Derek Jones Jr.
Yes, it was Chris Dunn, and I love the Derek Jones Jr. I want to hear where you're going with that, but go ahead. The floor is yours, sir.
I get these players don't score a lot. I don't care. They are just impactful, winning players who you want surrounded around these offensive-focused players in James Harden and Kawhi Leonard. Mm-hmm. You want a Chris Dunn to handle that defense. He's been insane defensively this year.
There's been a lot of good defensive
performances.
Go on.
I have him in a dynasty league and I'm rebuilding. I was trying to trade him away for value, and no one had any interest in acquiring him. And I'm like, I'm just asking for like a decent second, or like a high-end second, or like a prospect. Like I was trying to get Moussa Diabate, and I'm like, that seems pretty fair. You get a player who can help you in assists and steals, pretty low cost for Diabate, who we don't even know if he has a secure role going forward. But I digress.
Sounds like somebody really pissed in your Wheaties over there.
No one wanted Chris Dunn. Whatever.
Was it Grady Dick?
No, he didn't.
Grady Dick in a fantasy league with you, Mark?
No.
Doc,
did Grady Dick piss in your Wheaties?
Doc,
Yeah.
we had a conversation about this before the show.
It's okay. We're not doing a
We're not
deep
doing it?
dive on Dick.
So Chris Dunn. I mean, if you need, he's going to get minutes because of his defense, and you have Norman Powell out. He's going to be reevaluated in probably about a week to 10 days. So Chris Dunn's going to see minutes. On that note, Doc said Bogdan Bogdanovic. Sure. If you need some threes, he should have at least the opportunity.
Finally had a good game.
Had one. He's had a lot of bad games though, so I don't know. How much
I don't think he's
trust
healthy.
him.
That's the
Yeah.
takeaway there. I don't. If he was healthy, it'd be different. But
Yeah. And then Derek Jones Jr. just kind of a solid, more roto style production. Not going to hurt you anywhere. Probably not going to massively help you anywhere either. But just a good player to get you some stuff. He'll usually get you some stuff on a game.
so, like with Chris Dunn, real quick, a quick second there. It feels as if they're entrusting him with more offense, and that's huge. Like if he was ever good on offense, I mean, we're talking about a different conversation entirely. In fact, it was Detroit when I was watching, and the opposing announcers for Detroit were really just like, wow, like they hadn't seen him in a while, and they made a comment like, now he's almost looking like the number 5 pick. And so if he gets any offense, great. But yeah, you got a team in the Clippers that eventually will shut things down a little bit, get ready for the playoffs. They've got guys like Kawhi, et cetera, et cetera. Norman Powell's out. And here's a guy that defensively, there's something in the water this year in the league. It's crazy to think that, like, I've watched Keon Ellis's entire season, and I've never seen, or not never, but like maybe 20 defensive performances like this in 20 years of doing this, where an entire half of the floor gets cut off, and like a Kyrie Irving goes, I don't want that guy, and then he might not even be the best defensive player in the league this year. That might be Dyson Daniels. I haven't watched enough of Dyson Daniels to know like how dominant really is it. The deflections numbers and the steals numbers are crazy, and then you get a guy like Chris Dunn. Yeah, it's like I just don't watch enough of the Hawks to know like, is it really that crazy? Chris Dunn is in that same level. And it's crazy to think that like in today's NBA that's so offensive minded, though they've dialed it back a tiny bit. It's so offensive minded, and perimeter players being able to shut down guys is such a premium. We're still kind of stuck in this mentality of only tall players can get defensive player of the year. And, Evan Mobley, who is very good. He's as good as any of these other guys. He probably runs away with the award. Keon's not even in the odds for the defensive player of the year. I kind of doubt Chris Dunn is even in the odds for the defensive player of the year. Yet these guys are putting performances out there that if you breathe on a guy, you get a foul. Yet these guys are dominating offensive players. It's really interesting to watch how good they've been. But Chris Dunn, I think, is going to be pretty good down the stretch. I don't even know if I'd consider him a streamer. I'd just consider him a rest of the season guy and hope he doesn't get hurt. Anybody wants to add?
I think the answer is if you need splashy numbers, if you want points and 3-pointers and somebody who's going to play a ton of minutes, you want Bogey Bogdanovic. He's scored in double figures in 7 of his last 8 games. He's played between 31 and 39 minutes in his last 3. That's the Norman Powell bump. He's hit 10 3-pointers over his last 3 games. So if you want that stuff, Bogey, to me, is the guy you go pick up. If you want steals, you go get Chris Dunn. If you want steals and blocks, you go get Derek Jones Jr. Along with threes. All 3 of them have some merit and have some value. They're all worth a look. I think Dunn's the trendy guy because of the steals, because he's a mini Dyson Daniels, but he's not scoring very much. Outside of the steals, he's kind of tricky. And then if he does have an off night like he had the other night, it's kind of rough. So I'd feel like Bogdanovic is safer, but again, it depends on what you need. And then if you're super deep and super desperate, there's Amir Coffey, who we probably shouldn't forget about just because he's getting a lot of minutes. He's kind of in a 6-man, 7th man role for them. And He's been okay. I don't trust him when Norman Powell is back, but he's been okay.
Before we get into Dynasty Risers and Fallers, I do want to let you guys know, here are participants on the show, that your private chat has been blasted all out over Twitter, where you guys constantly make Grady Dick jokes. You guys are accidentally tweeting all of that out. It's not just in the private chat. Secondarily, guys, we have a bunch of things going on here at Sports Ethos. We have an app that's free that is amazing. It has all of the news that you want without having to wade through social media. It's got tools for your fantasy basketball teams, and we are putting a ton into that. And at the end of the show, I'm going to ask you guys for feedback on all of these things going on at the website. Also, the MLB draft guide is out, and these guys have been working their asses off all season, all off season, and doing the work of being analysts, which is kind of a thing that doesn't happen as much these days, as much as social media happens. But these guys have been doing all of those mental push-ups, getting ready. Their draft guide is excellent. You can get the MLB pass for 25% off with the promo code MLB2025. And if you want all of the sports in one package, you can get the all sport pass for basically the price of one sport with the promo code all sport 2025 or all sport 25. All sport 25. I'll get these promo codes at some point in time. Next season, I will probably get good at the code thing.
Clear as mud.
Yeah. You know how I roll. And then, that'll do it for all that. We got Dynasty Risers and Fallers. Mark, you got a bunch of names here. I think we can probably get through half of them in a reasonable amount of time. I'm going to turn the floor to you. Like, I mean, what do you do right now in a Dynasty league? Like, do you have formats where you can still trade? Like, how does that work? I'd be really super interested to see like how, because like if you were to have trades at this time of the year, wouldn't it have like some problematic implications for like playoff runs and things like that? Or,
it definitely would. Most of the leagues I am in, the trade deadline is either a week or 2 weeks after the NBA trade deadline. So more like mid-February.
I know a bunch of mine just passed. So like there's got to be some out there that are still active, right?
Some, it usually will butt up right against the end of the playoffs or like the week before playoffs start, somewhere in that time frame. So it may be dependent on when your playoffs start as well.
I can't do the private chat. It's killing me. We need to put that online. Andre, can we put the private chat online? I would like to see the private chat online. I think the people deserve to see the private chat.
That might be a separate subscription.
Yeah, that might have a label on it. Okay. Speaking of the private chat, who are your risers? Who do you like? Who's rising out there?
Let's start at the top. And these aren't the biggest risers, but probably more significant risers, because players who rise at the top, that's going to be the most impactful players. So Franz Wagner and Cade Cunningham, I think, just further establishing themselves over the course of the season. And from my last update in early December to this update now in early March, Franz Wagner had that stretch without Paulo where he just really took off. High volume of threes, high volume of assists, really took the reins of that offense.
Why aren't you using the language from your notes, Mark?
I knew I was getting Franz Wagner's name wrong. I hope that was
no,
better.
not the name. I'm just your notes in preparation for the show. It's very aggressive. I'm sorry. I'm taking us off base here. Go on about Franz Wagner.
Yeah, I mean, Wagner's tailed off a little bit now with Paulo Banchero in the lineup, and probably just a little neutered or a little lessened with coming off the injury. That's a tough injury with the oblique injury, but we've seen now what the peaks can really be with him, and that is pretty impactful stuff. And then Cade Cunningham really establishing himself as a capable high-usage monster on that Pistons team. I'll admit to being a bit of a Cade Cunningham hater. I don't really love the lack of getting to the rim or the lack of rim pressure, and I think the turnovers are still a little problematic, but
they were brutal against the Clippers that game.
Exactly, where Chris Dunn
back-breaking. Yeah, Dunn owned him. I mean, before the big line, the line was massive, but Dunn owned him. With Cunningham, do you think how many levels does he have? Like, because it feels like he definitely has established himself as a guy that can get to whatever spot on the floor he wants against all but the elite defenders out there.
I actually disagree with that a little bit because his rim pressure isn't all that
Isn't all there.
great. Yeah. He does get to the rim a good amount, or sorry, get to the
Well, it
free
feels
throw
like he
line
gets
a good
side to
amount, but
side. Yeah, that's
he's more
great
side to side.
correction.
He's not necessarily bursty or shifty or overpowering. He's just
Smooth.
he's smooth enough to get the contested shots off he wants to. And I don't love a contested shot diet. I'd rather him actually, get to shots that are better. Like what's the term? Shot quality is pretty low compared to other stars. And I mean, normally the stars do take harder shots. It's still a harder shot diet than a lot more contested mid rangers than I like. But at the same time, he is progressed to a point where he's hitting them well enough where, I mean, his usage is insanely high. I think it's hard to project any player for this level of usage. But then again, like if you think of who's the Pistons' second best player, and it's like Malik Beasley or Oscar Thompson or Jalen Duren, I mean, there's no one to really take that usage from him. So,
And it's
I
worked
guess
for
he
them.
is going to produce.
Yeah, and it's worked. Like, I mean, all of this winning has occurred after Jaden Ivey, I mean, sure, it's not his fault, but like the idea that you just give the ball to Cade and get out of the way, it works for them. And that to me makes me wonder, they can't have that configuration forever, right? You can't just have a Cade Cunningham offense only forever. So
I definitely don't think that's going to be good enough.
So
long term, if the Pistons want to be, like even a tier 2 contender,
right?
They do need another guy there. They need another
for Dynasty. So like, do you kind of like take like Cade's, like right now, Cade's a first and a second round value in 8 and 9 cat leagues, and he's a second round value in 9 cat leagues despite whatever turnover number he has. I think it's like 4 or something, or 3.8. So do you take this like, hey guys, like this guy's the next coming of whoever, and then knowing that eventually there'll be a second dude there to take a bunch of shots? Like, do you kind of try to ride this wave now with a sell high, or do you just keep going?
That is a very interesting question because it's a question I do pose to myself. And I feel like I have tended in the past in my rankings to gravitate more towards this is where I see this player going because of his individual talent, more team situation agnostic. But I think in the last couple months, the last 2 rankings at least, I've shifted a bit more to not necessarily factoring in the team context more, but thinking about, is it reasonable to expect the player, or especially for the stars, is it reasonable for the team to want to search that out and maybe to say, hey, at least we know he's producing this now and is set for, at least maybe wait and see what happens when another star comes, or if another star comes into the focus.
We're going to do something fun right now because Doc's sitting over there. I know that this conversation is just enthralling him. And what I want to do is I want to turn and hand the baton to Doc. I want to let Doc take the baton and run and ask the questions of our expert Mark Camaro with the best Dynasty coverage in the business. Doc,
well,
the floor is yours.
That means that I need to go pull up the email that
you
Andre
need to stop
sent.
watching Flow for like the 5 millionth time in a row. Have you figured out what the whale is? Have you figured out what the whale in Flow is yet?
Have you watched Flow?
I did.
No spoilers. No spoilers. I might be planning on watching it next week.
I will not do that to anybody out there. You're right. That's not fair. That's not fair.
All right, Mark, can we talk about Khalil Ware for a second?
We can talk about him for a second, and the second is now up.
I'm sad that he's hurt. Good Lord.
No, we can talk about him for longer than that.
But you just broke Doc's heart.
Is Khalil Ware going to do what we think he's going to do? I guess next year, is it the year after? Like, when do we get full-time badass Khalil Ware?
End of year 2, beginning of year 3, assuming standard development. I actually did a kind of a Heat deep dive for my team to watch on the last 2 weeks of the Pun Intended podcast. And I mean, the biggest thing about Ware is he's just massive on the court. And I don't know if you all know, but being big kind of does help you play basketball. It's a pretty nice part to have. And when you pair his good mobility for his size, a little bit of ball skills, some shooting, a little bit of defensive instincts, he just has to hone that all together. But there's definitely that full picture package that is a very exciting fantasy player at the center spot. He's already averaging about 2 assists per game since he's been starting, which, I mean, it doesn't sound like a lot, but for a center who doesn't necessarily touch the ball all too often, that's encouraging. Encouraging assist percentage. He's taking threes, making them all right. Just doing a lot of things well at his size that really you can see this monster fantasy player in there waiting down the road. It's hard to say when it exactly will happen, but he's certainly on that path.
Lots of jokes and innuendos possible with all of that. But what about the rest of your risers and fallers? What do you got there?
Let's go to Trey Murphy III, who has really excelled. I don't know if excel is maybe a slightly too strong a word, but has done really well on increased usage and maintaining those percentages and doing the scoring really well on kind of a lost Pelican season. I somewhat struggle though, given to evaluate his real talent, given the team context and the somewhat random spike in usage. It's understandable why it's happening, but I don't know if he forced the Pelicans' hand there. But the stats stare me back in the face, and I see, well, yeah, maybe the points per play isn't too efficient, but he's still doing it. So I kind of want to ask y'all, how real do you think Trey Murphy III's improvement is?
Doc, you want to go first?
I mean, I love Trey Murphy. I think if Trey Murphy played on a decent team, he would have been considered for the All-Star game this year. He's a little bit of a one trick pony in the fact that I feel like he's better at 3-pointers than he is anything else. But I feel like the future is pretty bright for Trey Murphy. I was not fully on board with him coming into the season, but I think I'm there now. He's going to be fun for the next 10 years.
I think when shooting is that easy for somebody, like the other skills will fill in, unless he has some weird thing happen where he forgets to shoot. Sometimes that happens with shooters. You can't predict it. It feels like he's not that guy, that he's just going to be able to lift a 3-pointer whenever he feels like it and have, excellent 3-point shooting rate, and the dribbles will just come, and then he will just have, he'll be able to take more contact as the seasons go on. He'll probably get a little bit slower, lose that athleticism. But that's the other thing about this equation is, okay, you got to run him off the line. Well, guess what? This dude can still win a dunk contest if he probably wanted to. So that's a really good combination. I'm pretty much all in. The injury stuff is a little concerning, but I mean, he'll probably be overvalued maybe for a little tiny bit, have that recede a bit. And then after that, once people see that, oh yeah, this is really real, then he might just be a perennial, top 24 kind of guy in fantasy leagues for the next 3-4 years. Cause I do think they will build around him in New Orleans.
I think last point you made was, I think that last point you made was really salient, where, people are seeing this spike, and maybe to see his 9-cat ranking, they see, oh wow, he's top 20. Well, the low turnovers are doing a lot of work there, and low turnovers are good. I think it can overstate a player's fantasy impact at times if you just look at that. In other words, I am saying I don't think he's really been a true top 25 impact per se. Let's say he hasn't been impactful, just not at that level. So I think maybe he's seeing a bit of a crest in dynasty value, and I think as you said, it will recede. So I think ranking him a bit where I think that recession or that recede point will be, but there's certainly a chance that he just keeps this up or improves further, and then it's just, I feel silly.
Yeah, no, I mean, and that's what he's kind of done right now is, this guy dropped to 80 or 90 in a lot of drafts. And then it was like, okay, well, he's only going to be out a couple weeks. He'll be back. And, he's really, really good. And the whole idea behind New Orleans for he and Herbert Jones was that, and of course Jones got injured, was that you got a team that's got a bunch of top heavy names that are not likely to play a lot. And when those guys get out of the way, you're going to have a lot of fun there with the wings. Okay. We probably got
I just noticed that Andre had wanted us to alternate risers with fallers, and I screwed that up by immediately going right down the list of risers. I think we have time to talk maybe one more riser, and then we'll get into some fallers. But I would like for Mark to tell us his take on Keon Ellis, because I would like to hear someone else besides Bruski.
You want to hear somebody. You want somebody besides yourself to talk trash on Keon Ellis. That's what it is.
I just want to hear somebody else say his name besides you.
Yeah, Mark hates Keon. I heard him say it.
No, I think the only hesitation I have in moving Keon Ellis more up in my ranking is just, are the Kings going to trust him in, I'll say, quote unquote, unleash him? I don't think there's some untapped on-ball juice there, although he can certainly flash that in spurts or if chances come to him. But I mean, he's clearly a good defensive stats player. First of all, a great defensive player, and great at getting steals, great at getting blocks. And then he shoots threes at a pretty nice volume. That's been increasing. That's been improving. It's just the question, is he going to see, that 30 minutes plus minutes a game mark? And if he can see that, then he can really shoot up. I just don't know if the Kings are going to do that. I thought they would this season. It just made sense to me with their lineup configurations. So, but hasn't yet. I don't know if he's going to get there. It doesn't seem like the Kings are really view Keon fully that way. But I definitely believe in his individual skill level.
I think Doug Christie views it that way. I think that Vivek Ranadive has had as much enamoration, if that's a word. He's been as enamored with Zach LaVine as I have been with Keon Ellis for years. So now you have Zach LaVine in the house, and you got Malik Monk in the house, and you've got DeMar DeRozan, who's probably exiting stage left after the season, I would have to imagine. So that's a lot of ball handlers. But the interesting thing with Keon is they're now looking at him in times where they need a bucket because they don't have anywhere to go and the clock's running down, and they recognize he's one of the best 3-point shooters on the team, if not the best 3-point shooter on the team. Malik Monk's probably a little bit better because he's got more skills, but in terms of accuracy, he's been the guy. Really, when Keon's family's over for dinner, I'll ask them about his origin story, but I see him as a player that maybe started late in his life playing the game of basketball, maybe playing other sports. He plays a lot. He plays defense like he's been a cornerback in football, and his angles on the backside of like he covers like 3 different players at once, and it really confuses the strong side where they're like, I don't know if I can skip this thing. I don't know if I can rotate and, move it at all. And that's why you see all these possessions gummed up while he's out there. And if he learns how to dribble, that's the biggest thing for him. He's a very bad dribbler right now in the context of guard play. And that keeps him from really using his physical skills. But I think he does have a lot of length and will be able to be a driver. And he makes relatively good decisions under pressure. So there's something there. And I'm just interested to see when that comes to fruition. But now I'm talking about Keon Ellis. Doc wanted you to talk about Keon Ellis. You got any final thoughts on Keon Ellis before we get to fallers?
No, I think that was a really good point about his dribbling, which is, he's not going to initiate an offense. I don't think he's going to get to that point. I don't think he has that sort of handle and craft. He can be opportunistic on closeouts in that sort of situation, attacking the basket, and then maybe find assists that way. But if you're not going to have that usage or that lead guard capabilities, that is going to keep your usage, going to keep your points down, going to keep your chances at assists down. And that does put a little bit of a ceiling on his dynasty value. But still, this is the type of player that I just love watching, and I want to see him do well and get that starter role.
He's going to have it right now for a little bit because Malik Monk's got at least a few games out, and Zach LaVine's not a spring chicken, and their playoff race will determine how heavy they're going to push guys into action. And you know how things get in the last couple of weeks. You get these little islands in the standings where you have no chance to go up or down, and in that place, though actually Keon's been a little dinged up, they might actually choose to rest him as well. So a lot of different things going on, and obviously we're not talking about the 2 weeks. We're talking about Dynasty for a further look out. Let's get to fallers before we run out of time. Who do you have falling?
I mean, first three big names, and these are injury players, so I just kind of lump them together. Joel Embiid, Kyrie Irving, DeJounte Murray. I don't really like labeling injury players who have incurred serious injuries as fallers, just because I think that's not that it's lazy analysis, but it's kind of simple. Yeah, they got injured, they're going to be out a while, or their injuries look really serious. I mean, yeah, they're going to drop, but it does need to be pointed out. Like, I don't know how you can rely on Joel Embiid to be a mainstay of your dynasty team. DeJounte Murray, I traded him away in a dynasty league like a week or two after his injury, just because I don't think he's going to play next season, if at all. It's going to be very little. He's probably not. So, I mean, you're missing a season and a half now. And how much is he giving you once he comes back from an Achilles injury? I don't want to project that. I don't want to just have a player like that that's just
whose game's built on athleticism at this point.
Yeah, exactly. Like I'd be really worried if I was rostering DeJounte Murray, and maybe his value is low now, but I think I don't want to say when people wisen up, but I think when people realize just how much of his game could get sapped, it's gonna look ugly when he returns. I was happy. Maybe it was like quote unquote sell low in that moment, but I was very happy to trade away DeJounte Murray. Especially, I was a competitive team. I was in the playoffs, or still am in the playoffs. But I was like, I don't want to. I don't want to this roster. But I think dead weight might be a little harsh, but he was going to be anyway. I don't like talking about injuries. He's gonna. I'm worried about his dynasty value and
Mark,
state of play though.
I don't see LaMelo Ball on your Fallers list, nor do I see him on the list of your injured guys. Where are you with LaMelo Ball? Like, is he rising or falling, or is he just stagnant? I feel like Paul George, LaMelo Ball, like you're just playing with fire with those guys. I'm not feeling it.
You definitely get those share of opinions on LaMelo Ball. I'm of the stance that some of his injury issues are a little overblown just because the Hornets have been kind of tanking this season. They've been tanking the past couple seasons. So if you look at games played, yes, he hasn't been available, but was it because he wasn't able to be available? Their team made him not available. I lean to kind of a mix of that. I think we saw him be pretty healthy until this recent stretch, which, I mean, I don't think it's as real an injury as it could be, but I could be reading into that wrong. I'm kind of thinking what I feel like is a middle ground, but maybe I'm a little more dismissive of those injuries than I should be. But what he was doing at the beginning of the season was very impressive with his shooting and driving that team. It's a hard situation when you have a player that talented that we've seen miss that many games, and then trying to give additional insight to, well, are those injuries real or not? It's tough.
Who else? I mean, I'm looking at your list here. There's a lot of interesting names. Like,
who do you want to hear? Who do you want to talk about, Brew? Which one do you?
Okay, no, that's a great question. I thought Emmanuel Quickly. I thought that was really super interesting. What do you got there?
Yeah, that was the name I was gonna bring up next. Are we sure Emmanuel Quickly is even like an okay on-ball player? Because
that was the part of the note that caught me.
I'm pretty suspicious of it. Like, how good is he? I mean, we've seen him have spurts, but have we seen him have any like consistency? I mean, I know he got a good amount of assists towards the end of last season on a tanking Raptors squad, though. So it's kind of someone's getting that assist. I don't think we've seen him have sustained levels of like real point guard play. And if he's not giving that, then he's just an off-ball three shooter. His three rate isn't that, or not his three rate, his steals rate isn't actually that impressive. So he's not giving you many steals or defensive stats. It's kind of baked into his offensive production. I'm not even sure if he's that good at that stuff. And then now you also have Brandon Ingram in the room, added to Scotty Barnes and RJ Barrett. All they're kind of helping to gobble up on-ball reps. I have a lot more questions than concrete answers on Quickly, where some people with that trade last season from the Knicks to the Raptors said, yeah, he's top 50, top 40 dynasty asset. And I tweeted this out. I was like, if you can trade him away for like a top 60, top 70 asset on the basis of this hype, I would definitely explore that. And I think I have quickly kind of around that range today. So I think
that's a very good take. Like a very good take at a tough time to make that take. That's why I think it's like so easy to say, you know, after the fact stuff. But when you look ahead like that and make that call, and of course, I mean, the Brandon Ingram piece doesn't happen back then. So you got that kind of working against quickly now. This is a collection of players, by the way, that I just cannot in my mind at all visualize how this works well.
Can anyone tell me why Toronto's going all in on Brandon Ingram? Like it's one of the more confusing things outside of trading Luka Doncic that I've seen. Like, what is going on?
It's like didn't even get a discount on his contract extension. That was just like kind of what he wanted, and he got a player option. Like I don't know. It's
this is a guy in GM. I'm just blanking at his name because I'm still sick as a dog. It was what's his name? Masai Ujiri up in Toronto. Like it's not like this guy. Everybody goes, "Oh, that guy sucks." You know, that guy hasn't done anything right. He's won a championship. He's put some things together that were nice. I mean, even just like the small time that I was doing reporting for the Kings, getting to talk to him a little bit whenever Denver was in town, like that was, you know, it was a good, smart basketball guy. What is this? Like, I can't imagine that this is good player theory. Like you're just going to stack as many good players as you can. And we're going to just assume that Brandon Ingram is that good player still.
I mean, let's ask the Phoenix Suns how that worked out.
It's almost like one of these guys got to go.
I mean, I do wonder if there's like a Barrett trade in the offseason for a better fitting piece, but I don't know. This feels like, you know, what was it? Project 669 was the name for the get all the wings and hope they develop. This is now Project, 6 and 9 seed.
Yeah, I like it. I like it a lot.
You know, we didn't get to very many players on Mark's list. You can check out Mark's Punt Intended podcast on Monday. He's going to deep dive on a lot more guys because the list is long. We just don't have time to do it all. Some of us have tea times for Golden TV.
Look at this guy.
Look at
this guy.
But yeah, Monday, Punt Intended with Mark. If you play Dynasty, that's where you want to be.
I think you should close us out, man. That was beautiful.
For the great Aaron
Look at
Bruski.
He's really just did it to it. He's just going to close us all the way out.
For the great Aaron Bruski.
No, you need to thank Andre because of all the work he does in the back.
Well, you didn't give me time, bro. You cut me off.
Okay, all right. I'll let you do your thing. Go for it.
One of the things the guys say in Golden Tee, the announcer is like, now for the incredible golfer one, for the incredible Aaron Bruski, for our stealth producer Andre, who we talk about him every show, but nobody's ever going to see his face. He's like the international man of mystery. He refuses to come on. He's smarter than all three of us combined. And he's dangerous. Andre, thank you. Great job. Sorry that I ignored your request to go alternate fallers and risers. And Mark, thanks for coming on, man. Thank you for not bringing up Grady Dick this time. That was still one of my favorite podcasts ever when we did a deep dive on Dick. And for that, this has been a Sports Ethos presentation sponsored by Bet Online. As Aaron Bruski would say, be well.